I love it, and I'm glad you mentioned mermaids because you have an article on your website about mermaids being real with several reports from the last few years, which are really surprising to me. But in 2009, news reports claimed that a mermaid had been sighted off the coast of Israel in the town of Kiryat Yam. The report in Live Science stated that locals and tourists in the Israeli town have been flocking to the coast in hopes of glimpsing a creature that most people believe only exists in fairy tales. An alleged mermaid, said to resemble a cross between a fish and a young girl, only appears at sunset. It performs a few tricks for onlookers before disappearing for the night. One of the first people to see the mermaid, Shlomo Cohen, said, I was with friends when suddenly we saw a woman laying on the sand in a weird way. At first, I thought she was just another sunbather, but when we approached, she jumped into the water and disappeared. We were all in shock because we saw she had a tail. The sightings apparently began several months ago. The town's tourism board is, of course, delighted with their newfound fame and local mystery. Taking a cue from the town of Inverness, Scotland, the shores of Loch Ness, the Kiryat Yam government has offered $1 million reward for the first person to photograph the creature. I mean, 2009, and it apparently is happening with some regularity. I'm just really shocked by that. But it seems like if these beings are down there, you'd have to get glimpses of them every once in a while. But they're really only supposed to come up and interact with us during these periods of reestablishing society after a cataclysm. But hey, I mean, we all get bored and want to see what's going on once in a while.
Sure. I mean, maybe, I don't know. They generally don't seem to want to interact right now. But if you go back, let's say even a couple of thousand years ago, we had there's this plague in India where we can see a mermaid in the lake, and there's a throng of people crowding around on the shore. There's a king also out there. They're all looking at her, and so it seems as if they could see the mermaids and maybe even interact with them, maybe even a couple of thousand years ago. Even in the Assyrian, some of the Assyrian sculptures and carvings, they show the mermaids. They basically are showing the ships plying on the sea, carrying all the goods, and just below the ship, you can see this merman. He's swimming below the ship, and they had no problem depicting that. So it's almost as if it was more common in the earlier times to see and interact with these particular beings. And but just like the fairy folk who kind of stopped their interactions with us maybe 1,000, 2,000 years ago, these beings also stopped their interactions.
Yeah, and you also say that on top of this Israeli situation, that Zimbabwe is the mermaid capital of the modern world, that there are a lot of rivers, specifically in areas near dams, that they say are teeming with mermaids who love to play tricks on humans. And it actually gets really interesting because the government gets involved. In 2012, the Zimbabwe Water Resources Minister, Sam Sipepa Nokmo, told the Senate committee that mermaids were hounding government workers off a couple of dam sites in various regions. And in 2017, mermaids were held responsible for the death of two schoolboys due to a drowning in Zimbabwe. The story goes that there were some kids at the Ganye Secondary School herding cattle, and they saw a mermaid at the dam. And I guess there were three boys, and two of them thought it was a big fish or something. So they tried to catch it, and it dragged them under. And the third boy, who didn't go in the water, was the one to tell the tale. He went back and told everybody, hey, we got to go back over here because these two kids got taken underwater. And when they arrived, when the parents and other adults came to the shore, they saw the boys laying on a rock alive. And the parents were really worried. They thought maybe they weren't alive. So they started crying. And then the story goes, a whirlwind suddenly engulfed the place before the mermaids swiftly appeared from the water and grabbed the boys for a second time. But this time their lifeless bodies resurfaced later. So they dragged them under again. They waited for the crowd. And then they took the boys and they said, no, we're going to kill you. And then they threw them back up on the shore. Really wild story. I mean, Zimbabwe also has a lot of UFO stories, from my understanding. I think there was another orphanage out there that had a landing and it got really crazy. But the world's a big place, and a lot of people, especially Westerners, kind of live within a bubble. And we don't even hear about these things going on out there, or the fact that a lot of other cultures do still hold a place in their minds for these other beings.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when it comes to mermaids, Zimbabwe is a crazy place. Uh, I can't think of any other place where you have such stories about mermaids anymore, which is kind of strange. You would think that if they're seeing mermaids so often, why don't we see it in some other places, which I don't have an explanation for.
Yeah, so many mysteries. But I like when you were talking about the fact that they left us. It does seem to make sense with the model that only when we're in our highest state can we even comprehend this higher intelligence. And if they know about these cycles and they have kind of a difference in time, maybe 1,000 years here is a day there, then they don't have to wait that long. They're just like, well, give them a week on our side of time, give them a week, and then they can actually start to understand this. Otherwise, they're just going to be with their jaws on the floor and they're not going to be able to even comprehend what's going on. I think that's kind of a really interesting model. And of course, we get little tiny interactions throughout the whole spectrum, but like it just makes sense that they came down at the last golden age when we were ready to do something with the knowledge they had.
Yeah, and it's also a decline in our morals and ethics because they now feel that if somebody sees a mermaid or something, let's say a Bigfoot or something, the first instinct would be to fire at it. Although a lot of Bigfoot stories tell us that the moment you spot one, you're basically paralyzed, so you can't really do anything about it. Yeah, I mean, even in alien stories or these alien sightings. They talk about some kind of a paralysis happening to the viewer. So they seem to be creating some kind of a field around them where you can't really move your body or your legs. Yeah. Uh, so so yeah, I mean, because of the fact that we have become more aggressive and more suspecting of anything that is slightly different from us, maybe that's why they are more reluctant to show themselves.
Absolutely. And when you hear about UFO encounters today, it is often taking people and giving them an information download and then putting them back. So maybe they try, and it's just like in this period at the cosmic rock bottom, we can't do a lot with the information. Or maybe the individual is ready to teach and ready to talk about everything they learned, what they can remember. Again, maybe a part of the composition of the mind at this stage of the game. But we just laugh at those people. We're not ready to incorporate any of that information or dig deeper into it. So it does make sense that there are periods, even in the dark times, where they're like, let's take another stab at it. Let's grab a couple hundred people around the globe and give them the full story, give them the full download, and see what happens. And obviously, nothing happens because of our point in time. I think it makes logical sense. Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1 hour interviews, you get the full 2 hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right.